a signature on a divorce petition. That's all Elena Cloud thought she was dealing with. A painful but clean break from her cheating husband, Marcus. But Marcus didn't just want the house. He didn't just want alimony. He wanted half of her company. The company she bled for. The company she built from nothing. He claimed his vision was the secret to her success. He demanded half, and he was willing to drag her name through the mud to get it. He thought he had her trapped. What he didn't know is that Elena's lawyers weren't just good. They were sharks, and they were about to turn a private settlement hearing into a public execution. Elena Cloud lived a life that Forbes had once called an architect's dream. Her firm Aura Interiors wasn't just successful, it was seismic. From their flagship office in a restored Soho warehouse, Aura had redefined sustainable luxury. They didn't just design rooms, they engineered biophilic experiences. Their clientele included tech billionaires, eco-conscious hotel chains, and old money families looking to modernize. Elena was the engine. She was the one who 10 years ago had sketched her first designs on a coffee shop napkin, taken out a crippling loan, and personally sourced reclaimed lumber from a 19th century barn. She was the one who spent nights agonizing over material tensile strength and negotiating with artisans. And by her side for the last 7 years was Marcus Thorne. Marcus was by all accounts the perfect husband. Devastatingly handsome, effortlessly charismatic, he was the velvet glove to her steel fist. He'd joined Aura 3 years into its journey, taking the title of Director of Business Development. In truth, his job was to be charming. He attended galas, networked at golf tournaments, and was the handsome face quoted in lifestyle magazines. Elena handled the operations, the design, and the soul of the company. Marcus handled the champagne. Their power couple image was flawless. Elena intense and brilliant in her minimalist structural attire. Marcus relaxed and dapper with a smile that could disarm a hostile board. The first crack appeared not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a line item on a spreadsheet. Elena was doing a quarterly review of the marketing budget, a task she usually delegated, but had taken back as costs seemed to be ballooning. She frowned at the screen. Thorne Strategic Solutions, LLC. There were monthly invoices for the last 8 months. 15,000. 20,000. 15,000 again. The description was always the same: strategic market analysis and outreach. She didn't remember approving this vendor. "Hey, David," she called out to her CFO, who was walking past her glass-walled office. "You ever heard of a Thorne Strategic Solutions?" David paused, adjusting his glasses. "Thorne, I assumed it was one of Marcus's groups. The invoices are all approved by him. They come in like clockwork on the 28th. "Get me the incorporation papers for that LLC," Elena said, a cold knot forming in her stomach. "And all the paid invoices. Now." An hour later, the papers were on her desk. Thorne Strategic Solutions, LLC, was a Delaware corporation, registered 10 months prior. The sole signatory and owner, Marcus Thorne. Her husband was paying himself $20,000 a month from her company, on top of his generous salary for consulting he never mentioned. She felt the blood drain from her face. It was embezzlement. It was a betrayal. But it wasn't the betrayal. Not yet. That night, she didn't go home to their shared brownstone. She went to the Ludlow Hotel, checking in under her assistant's name. She needed to think. This was a legal matter, not just a marital one. But her hands were shaking. She had to know. She opened her laptop and accessed the company's travel and expense platform. She pulled up Marcus's recent business trip to Chicago, a conference on future-facing brand synergies. The hotel folio was from the Peninsula. Standard. Flights. Standard. But then the receipts. Room service for 2 every morning. A spa receipt couples deep tissue massage. A dinner receipt from Alinea for $1,200 with a handwritten note on the bottom from the maitre d'. So lovely to host you and Miss Jensen again. Mr. Thorne, congratulations on the new venture. Miss Jensen. Elena's mind flashed. Chloe Jensen, a junior designer who had quit Aura abruptly 6 months ago, citing personal reasons. She had been pretty ambitious, and Elena now realized often lingering in Marcus's office after hours. It wasn't just embezzlement. He was using company money to fund an affair. When she finally confronted him the next day, in their pristine white marble kitchen, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He was pouring an espresso, his back to her. She laid the hotel folio on the counter. "Alinea," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I hope the congratulations were worth $1,200 of my company's money." Marcus froze. He turned slowly, his face not one of guilt, but of annoyance. He saw the hotel bill, the spa receipt. He sighed, leaning against the counter, as if she had just interrupted his morning paper. "Elna, let's not be dramatic." "Dramatic?" Her voice cracked. "You are expensing your affair, Marcus. You're stealing from me, from my company." "Oh, please," he scoffed. "Don't act like you can't afford it. And besides, Chloe, she understands the pressure I'm under, which is more than I can say for you lately." Eleanor felt the air leave her lungs. The casual cruelty of it, the utter lack of remorse, was a physical blow. He wasn't sorry he did it. He was annoyed he got caught. "Get out," she whispered. "What? Get out of my house. Get your things and get out." Marcus's eyes hardened. The charming mask fell away, revealing something cold and reptilian. "Fine," he snapped. "But you just made the biggest mistake of your life, Elena. You have no idea what you just did." "I'm calling my lawyer," she said, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. "You do that?" he sneered, grabbing his leather jacket from a chair. "Call your lawyer, and I'll call mine. You think this is your house? You think that is your company? You are about to learn just how wrong you are." The next 48 hours were a blur of numb logistics. Elena changed the locks on the brownstone and her office. She froze Marcus's access to all company accounts and issued a terse internal memo, stating he was on an indefinite leave of absence, effective immediately. She spent one long, tear-filled night on her sofa, cycling through rage, grief, and a profound, bone-deep humiliation. Then she called Rebecca Shaw. Rebecca was a senior partner at Lockwood Steel and Garrison, a law firm known for handling divorces that looked more like corporate dissolutions. She was sharp, impeccably dressed, and possessed zero patience for emotional fluff. "He stole from the company, Elena," Rebecca said, peering over her glasses in a glass-walled conference room overlooking Bryant Park. "That's wire fraud. It's embezzlement. We don't just have grounds for divorce. We have grounds for a criminal referral, in a divorce that gives us all the leverage." "I don't want to send him to jail," Elena said, her voice small. I want him gone. I'll be fair with the assets. The brownstone, the art, the savings. He can have half of everything we shared. But Aura is mine." "Of course it is," Rebecca said, making a note. "You are the sole founder. His employment is a separate matter from the marital assets. We'll send his lawyer a standard offer. He'll take it. He'd be a fool not to give in his criminal liability. But Marcus, it turned out, was a very special kind of fool. The letter that arrived at Rebecca's office was not a settlement acceptance. It was a declaration of war. Rebecca called Elena immediately. "You need to come in, and you should sit down." The letter was from a notoriously aggressive law firm, Harrison and Black. Elena read it, her blood running cold. Marcus wasn't just refuting the embezzlement. He was denying it, calling the Thorn Strategic Solutions a pre-approved executive compensation fund that Elena had verbally authorized. But that wasn't the bomb. The letter stated that Marcus Thorn was claiming 50% ownership of Aura Interiors, Inc. "That's impossible," Elena whispered, her hands shaking. "My name is the only one on the incorporation documents. I am the 100% shareholder." "He's not claiming he was a shareholder, Elena," Rebecca said, her voice grim. "He's claiming he was your partner. He's claiming that Aura Interiors was built not just on your design work, but on his strategic vision, brand development, and sweat equity. He's claiming that you had a verbal agreement from the beginning to be equal partners, and that you fraudulently filed the incorporation papers in your name alone." Elena stared at her. He lied. He wasn't even there in the beginning. I was eating ramen noodles and sleeping in the office. He showed up 3 years later. "He's prepared for that," Rebecca said, turning the page. "He claims his initial contributions were the conceptual framework for the brand, and that his later networking has transformed the company from a small workshop into a global brand. He's attached a list of every client he ever had lunch with as proof of his contribution." It was insane. It was a fantasy. It was a lie so audacious that Elena almost laughed. "No court will ever believe this," Elena said, standing up. "It's absurd." "It's not absurd, Elena. It's a shakedown." Rebecca countered, her tone urgent. "He's not trying to win in court. Not really. He's trying to force your hand. He knows that a public, ugly lawsuit claiming the founder of Aura Interiors defrauded her partner will be catastrophic for your brand. It'll spook investors. It'll rattle clients." Elena's phone buzzed. It was her head of PR. "Don't answer it," Rebecca ordered. Elena looked at the screen. The preview text was frantic. "Elena, a reporter from the New York Post, is asking for comment on a pending lawsuit from Marcus Thorn. What is going on?" Elena's legs gave out. She sank back into the chair. "He leaked it," Elena whispered, horrified. "He already leaked it. He's not just trying to get paid, Elena," Rebecca said, her eyes now flinty. "He's trying to burn your company to the ground unless you give him what he wants. This isn't a divorce anymore. This is a hostile takeover. The demand was clear in the final paragraph. Marcus would graciously drop his 50% ownership claim and the fraud lawsuit in exchange for a one-time cash settlement of $50 million. $50 million. It was a figure designed to cripple her. "He's insane," Elena breathed. "He's not insane," Rebecca said, closing the file. "He's evil, and he thinks he's smarter than you. Our job is to prove him wrong. But this is going to be a war, and it's going to be public." Elena's world, once defined by the clean lines of her designs, had become a chaotic blur of legal strategy and damage control. The New York Post ran the story, of course. "Aura of Deceit, CEO's husband, claims she stole £200 from company." The article was dripping with quotes from a source close to Mr. Thorn, painting Marcus as the unsung visionary and Elena as a coldly ambitious operator. The fallout was immediate. 2 high-profile clients put their projects on hold. Her investors, a private equity group from Boston, called an emergency board meeting. "This is a PR nightmare, Eleanor," said Daniel Levine, the fund's manager. "A public fight about the company's very founding. It makes us look unstable. Settle it. Give him the $50 million. It's a rounding error compared to losing the brand's reputation." "It's not a rounding error to me," Elena said, her voice steely. "It's extortion. I will not pay him $1 for a lie. He's a thief who I happen to be married to." "Be that as it may, his story is gaining traction," Daniel warned. "Fix it, or we will be forced to reevaluate our position." She hung up, shaking with rage. She was being attacked by her husband and now abandoned by her partners. She stormed into the war room at Lockwood Steel and Garrison. Rebecca had commandeered a conference room, its walls now covered in whiteboards detailing Marcus's claims, his networks, and his known associates. "He's winning," Elena said, throwing her bag on the floor. "He's poisoning my board." "He's loud," Rebecca corrected, not looking up from a file. "There's a difference. Right now, he's all offense. We've been on defense. It's time to change that." "How?" "We can't prove a negative. I can't prove we didn't have a verbal agreement 10 years ago." "It's his word against mine." "No," Rebecca said, finally looking up. "His word is against his actions. He's built his entire case on the idea that he was the strategic mastermind, so we're going to find out what this mastermind was actually doing." She pointed to a junior associate. "Tell me about his company calendar for the last 2 years." The associate, a young man named Ben, cleared his throat. "It's thin, Ms. Shaw. Very thin. He's got networking lunch blocked out almost every day from 12 to 3. He has golf outings, galas. But in terms of actual internal strategy meetings, he cancelled 70% of them. When he did attend the minutes show, he tabled discussion on most key items." "He was lazy," Eleanor muttered. "He was performatively busy," Rebecca said. "But that's not enough. We need something hard, something that proves his motive wasn't sweat equity. It was malice. Elena, you mentioned he was expensing an affair." "Yes, Chloe Jensen, a former designer." "Find her," Rebecca ordered Ben. "But the real gold, it's that LLC, Thorn Strategic Solutions. He thinks he's so smart calling it executive compensation. But if he was just paying himself, it's a civil matter. It's marital waste. But if he was paying someone else, that's a conspiracy." Rebecca picked up the phone. "Get me Sarah at Kroll," she said to her assistant. Kroll was the most feared corporate investigations firm in the world. "Tell her I have a high-priority forensic accounting and digital investigation. I want a full deep dive on Marcus Thorne and his little LLC. I want every bank transfer, every email he ever sent from a company server, every text, every keycard swipe. I want to know where he was, who he was with, and what he was spending your money on, Elena. Every single cent." Rebecca hung up and turned to Elena. "He wants to play this in public fine. He thinks he's a visionary. We're about to give the world a very clear vision of exactly who Marcus Thorne is." The investigation began. It was a quiet, methodical dissection of Marcus's life. While Marcus was giving smug, no-comment interviews to Page 6, the Kroll investigators were pulling data from Aura's servers. 2 weeks later, the call came. "We have it," Sarah from Kroll said. "It's bad, Rebecca. It's worse than you thought." While Rebecca's team dug, Marcus escalated his public assault. He was a natural at playing the victim. He gave an exclusive, tearful interview to a high-profile morning show the kind that specialized in human interest stories. I loved her," he said, his voice catching. He was wearing a simple dark sweater, looking earnest and heartbroken. "And I loved that company. I put my soul into it. I brought in the first major clients. I crafted the brand story. Aura was my idea. And when our marriage got rocky, she just locked me out. She erased me." The host, a woman with a famously sympathetic demeanor, looked horrified. "So you're saying she's trying to cut you out of the company you built together?" "I just want what's fair," Marcus said, wiping a non-existent tear. "I'm not a monster. I just want her to honor the promise she made to me all those years ago, that we were partners in everything." The narrative was devastatingly effective. Elena, the brilliant but cold CEO, was now being painted as a corporate monster who would even defraud her own husband. At justice. For Marcus began trending, albeit briefly, on Twitter. Aura's Instagram comment sections were a war zone. Elena was a prisoner in her own home. Paparazzi waited outside her brownstone. Her employees were nervous, their faith in her shaken. "He's brilliant at this," Eleanor spat, watching the interview on her laptop from Rebecca's office. "He's lying. He's lying so beautifully." "He is," Rebecca agreed, unimpressed. "He's committing to the role. He thinks this public pressure will force you to settle before we ever get to discovery. He's counting on you being a businesswoman who will cut her losses. He's not prepared for you to be a fighter." "What he's doing, is it legal?" Elena asked. "Defamation. It's a divorce proceeding, Elena. The gloves are off. He can say he felt like a partner. He can say he believes he was defrauded. It's all subjective, until we introduce facts." At that moment, Sarah, the lead investigator from Kroll, was buzzed in. She was carrying a locked, hard-sided briefcase. "You'd better sit down for this," Sarah said, placing the briefcase on the table and clicking it open. She pulled out a thick, spiral-bound report. "This is the full forensic analysis of Thorn Strategic Solutions, LLC," Sarah began. "We're going to start with the money." She opened the report. "As we knew, Marcus was wiring 15 out of 20Ks a month from Aura's marketing budget to his LLC. We followed that money. He wasn't just paying himself. He was using it as a personal slush fund. Trips, dinners, watches, the affair with Chloe Jensen. We have receipts for a $20,000 Cartier bracelet and a 6-month lease on a luxury apartment in Tribeca, all paid for by the LLC. "So he was funding his affair," Elena said, her stomach twisting. "We knew that." "Yes," Sarah said, "but that's not the story. The story is what else he was doing. He wasn't just spending the money. He was investing it." Rebecca leaned forward. "Investing in what?" "A new company," Sarah said, turning the page. 2 months ago, a new design firm was incorporated in New York. It's called Echelon Designs. It has a new office leased in Dumbo. It has branding. It has a website currently in development. Eleanor felt a cold dread creep up her spine. Echelon Designs. Guess who the sole owner is? Sarah said, pointing to a line. A holding company. And who's the owner of that holding company? Chloe Jensen, the mistress. Elena was confused. So, he was setting her up in business? No, Rebecca said, her eyes wide as she read ahead. He was setting himself up. He was using her as a front. Sarah nodded. Exactly. Marcus was funding this new company, Echelon, with the money he was embezzling from your company. But it gets worse. He wasn't just building an office. He was stealing your business. She turned to the next section. Digital forensics. We imaged his hard drive and company phone. On the night you kicked him out after he left the house, he went to his office. He used his key fob at 2:13 a.m. He was there for 1 hour. He logged into the central Aura server and downloaded 3 things. She projected a list onto the conference room wall. 1. Aura Interiors. Full client list. 2015-2025. Includes private contacts, billing history, and contract details. 2. Aura Interiors Proprietary Vendor and Artisan List. Elena's most guarded secret, her network of exclusive craftspeople. 3. Project Nomad Pitches and Financials. A 100 Bensolas hotel project in Dubai that Aura was the front-runner for. Elena stood up, physically ill. He stole Project Nomad. He didn't just steal it, Elena, Sarah said, clicking to the next slide. He used it. We recovered deleted emails from his trash folder. He had already contacted the Dubai developers. As Echelon Designs, he was using your proprietary designs, your pricing models, and undercutting your bid. He was planning to launch his new company by stealing your biggest client. The room was silent. The cheating was a betrayal. The 50% demand was extortion. This was corporate espionage. This was a plan not just to leave her, but to replace her, to destroy Aura and build his own empire from her ashes. His lawsuit, Elena whispered, the pieces clicking together with horrifying clarity. The $50 million demand. It was all a distraction. Exactly, Rebecca said, her voice a low, furious hum. He never wanted $50 million. He wanted to tie you up in court, ruin your reputation and bleed you dry, all while he was stealing your clients and building his new company in plain sight. He thinks he's a visionary. Rebecca stood up and began to pace. He's not a visionary. He's a criminal. And he just gave us the gun, the bullet, and the fingerprint. The Kroll report was more than a legal document. It was a biography of a con man. Eleanor and Rebecca spent the next 3 days poring over every line item, every email, every digital breadcrumb. The picture it painted was of a man who had been meticulously planning his exit and Elena's ruin for at least a year. It wasn't just the embezzlement or the theft of the client lists. The digital forensics team had recovered cached files from Marcus's laptop that were even more damning. He had drafts of his lawsuit, claiming 50% of the company written 6 months before she discovered the affair. He had been waiting for the right moment to deploy it. He had a spreadsheet modeling the PR fallout, estimating how much Aura's valuation would drop once he filed his suit. He had calculated the precise moment her company would be most vulnerable, right before the Q4 earnings call. He was going to short your stock. Rebecca breathed, pointing to a browser history link to a site about put options. He wasn't just going to sue you. He was going to profit from your company's collapse. Eleanor felt a strange, cold calm settle over her. The grief was gone, replaced by a glacial fury. The man she had loved, the man she had shared a bed with, had been actively plotting to systematically destroy her life and her life's work. "What about Chloe Jensen?" Elena asked. "The mistress. She's the owner of Echelon Designs. Is she just a pawn?" "Let's find out," Rebecca said. They didn't have to look far. The Kroll report included all of Chloe's communications from her time at Aura. She wasn't a pawn. She was a co-conspirator. The emails between her and Marcus were sickening. They weren't love letters. They were business plans. Marcus from his personal email 3 months ago. "The Nomad pitch is almost ready. I have all of Elena's financials for it. We can come in 15% lower and still maintain a 60% margin. She'll never know what hit her. Chloe from her new echelon email. She's so arrogant. She really thinks all those artisans are loyal to her. They're loyal to the money. Once we show them our terms, they'll jump. Marcus. Just be patient. The legal side is ready. Once I file, she'll be in a PR tailspin. The board will pressure her to settle. By the time she realizes what's happening, we'll have landed Nomad and 2 of her other top clients. Echelon will be the new aura, and she'll be a footnote. Elena closed the report. She couldn't read anymore. He used my own money to build a company, to destroy me, she said. Yes, Rebecca said. And now we're going to use his own arrogance to destroy him. His entire plan hinges on one thing, that you'll be scared of a public fight. I was, Elena admitted. But that was when I thought it was a divorce. This is a war for my company's survival. Good. Rebecca smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. Because his lawyer, Mr. Harrison, has been insufferable. He's demanding a mandatory settlement arbitration. He thinks he can get us in a room, scream about verbal agreements and public humiliation, and walk out with a $50 million check. What does that mean, arbitration? It's a formal hearing, but outside of court. It's meant to be faster, less public, Rebecca explained. But Harrison, in his infinite wisdom, is demanding a transparent process. He's insisting on a media pool. He wants reporters in the room. Elena paled. He wants to do this in front of the press. He's an idiot, Rebecca said almost gleefully. He thinks he's directing a movie where he's the hero. He wants to publicly shame you into submission. He wants the Wall Street Journal to report on his powerful testimony about being the man behind the brand. Rebecca leaned across the table. And we are going to give him exactly what he wants. We are going to accept the arbitration. We will agree to the press pool. We will let him invite every reporter he can find. Rebecca, are you insane? Elena said. We'll be slaughtered. No, Rebecca said, tapping the Kroll report. He's bringing a knife to a gunfight. We're bringing a nuclear bomb. He thinks the subject of the hearing is marital assets and partnership claims. He has no idea that the real subject is grand larceny, wire fraud, and corporate espionage. We don't just refute his claim, Elena. We end him. Publicly. We let him build his entire gallows, and then we calmly hand him the rope. The week leading up to the arbitration was the longest of Eleanor's life. On Rebecca's strict orders, they said nothing. They issued a simple no comment to all press inquiries. Marcus, meanwhile, was on a victory tour. He was seen having celebratory dinners at Carbone, looking every bit the triumphant wronged man. His lawyer, Harrison, was just as loud, telling legal journals that he was supremely confident that his client's foundational contributions to Aura Interiors would be recognized. The narrative was set. Eleanor the Ice Queen was being forced to the table to face the man she had betrayed. Rebecca's team, meanwhile, was working with surgical precision. They didn't file a countersuit. They didn't leak the Kroll report. They held everything back. Instead, Rebecca filed a single motion with the arbitrator. We request full audio-visual capabilities in the conference room, including a high-definition projector and screen for the purposes of a multimedia presentation of our evidence. Harrison Marcus's lawyer readily agreed. Bring your little slideshows, he'd scoffed on a call. It won't change the facts. Oh, it will, Rebecca had whispered to Elena after hanging up. The night before, Elena couldn't sleep. What if he denies it? She asked Rebecca in a late-night call. What if he says we fabricated the emails? What if he just lies? Elena. Rebecca said, her voice firm. He's a narcissist. His greatest weakness is his belief that he's the smartest person in any room. He is coming tomorrow to perform. He is not prepared to be defended. He's not expecting an attack. He's expecting an audience. We're not just going to present evidence. We're going to present a timeline, a story, his story. And by the time he realizes what's happening, it will be too late. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you just need to do one thing. What? Look him in the eye while we do it. The morning of the arbitration, the lobby of the JAMS Mediation Center in New York was a zoo. Reporters, business, journalists, and even a few TV cameras were crammed into the waiting area. Marcus arrived like a star. He wore a $10,000 Tom Ford suit, his hair perfect. He smiled gravely for the cameras holding up a hand. Today we are just hoping for the truth to come out. That's all we've ever wanted. Elena and Rebecca arrived 5 minutes later. They walked through the media gauntlet without a word. Elena's face pale, but set Rebecca looking utterly composed. They entered the large oak-paneled conference room. At the head of the table sat the arbitrator, a retired federal judge. On one side, Marcus and his legal team, Harrison and Black. On the other, Eleanor Rebecca and 2 junior associates from their firm, who were quietly setting up a laptop and projector. Mr. Harrison, the arbitrator began, you requested this hearing. Your opening statement, please. Harrison stood. He strutted. For 20 minutes he laid out Marcus's case. He was poetic. He used phrases like the silent visionary and the architect of the brand. Marcus Thorne, he boomed, was the soul of Aura Interiors. Elena Cloud may have been the hands, but he was the heart. And for his years of vision, his tireless networking, his sweat equity that transformed a hobby into an empire, he is owed his rightful share. 50%. We have documents, emails, and Mr. Thorne's own testimony to prove his foundational role. Marcus looked on the picture of wounded dignity. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, the arbitrator said. Sure. Your response. Rebecca stood up. She buttoned her jacket. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Harrison is correct about one thing. We are here today to discuss Mr. Thorne's foundational role in this company, and to that end, we're glad he invited the press. We believe in full transparency. She nodded to her associate. The projector hummed to life. Mr. Harrison has painted a picture of his client as a partner. We'd like to paint a different picture, a picture of a parasite. Harrison leaped to his feet. Objection. That is inflammatory and unprofessional. It is a fact, sir, Rebecca said, her voice slicing through the room. And I have the receipts. The first slide appeared. It was a simple logo, Thorne Strategic Solutions. LLC Marcus, who had been leaning back in his chair, suddenly sat bolt upright. His confident smirk wavered. We'd like to begin, Rebecca said, by examining just what Mr. Thorne's sweat equity was really purchasing. The conference room at the JAMS Mediation Center was an arena, and everyone knew it. The air was thick with the scent of expensive wood polish, stale coffee, and raw, palpable tension. At the head of the long, polished mahogany table sat the arbitrator, Judge Harrison. No relation to Marcus's lawyer, a retired federal judge, whose face was a mask of bored neutrality. On the left side of the table, Marcus Thorne sat like a king holding court. He was leaned back, one arm casually draped over his chair, his Tom Ford suit perfectly tailored. He looked for all the world like a man who was about to be handed a 9-figure check. His lawyer, Adrian Harrison, was all bluster and confidence, shuffling papers with a theatrical flourish. Behind them, a row of 3 reporters from the Wall Street Journal Forbes and the New York Post sat with pens and laptops ready. This was the audience Marcus had demanded. On the right side, Eleanor Cloud sat with a posture of rigid steel. Her face was pale, her hands clasped so tightly on the table, her knuckles were white. Beside her, Rebecca Shaw was a picture of calm. She was meticulously, almost slowly, arranging 3 files and a water glass. Her junior associates Ben and another young lawyer were finalizing the connection from their laptop to the large 80-inch screen on the wall. "Mr. Harrison," the arbitrator began, his voice a dull monotone. "You and your client requested this binding arbitration. The floor is yours." Adrian Harrison stood, a predator's smile on his face. He buttoned his jacket and began to pace. "Thank you, Your Honor," he boomed, his voice projecting to the reporters in the back. "We are here today for a simple, painful, and necessary act of justice. We are here to correct a great wrong." He gestured dramatically toward Marcus. "We are here on behalf of Marcus Thorne. But who is Marcus Thorne? The press, in their zeal, have painted him as a jilted husband. But we are here to prove with indisputable evidence that Marcus Thorne was the soul of Aura Interiors, the engine, the visionary." For 20 minutes, Harrison spun a masterful tale. He painted Elena as a brilliant artisan, but a hopeless businesswoman, someone who would still be selling reclaimed wood picture frames on Etsy, if not for Marcus. "Who brought in the first 5-star hotel client?" Harrison demanded. "Marcus Thorne, who crafted the brand narrative that Forbes and Architectural Digest fell in love with Marcus Thorne, who networked for 7 years, sacrificing his own ambitions to build her name, Marcus Thorne." He spoke of the verbal agreement, the partnership of minds and hearts, the sweat equity that could not be measured in timesheets, but in results. And what was his reward? Harrison's voice dropped. What happened when this brilliant, tireless man was finally burned out from building his wife's empire? He was discarded, locked out, and his contribution, his foundational 50% stake in the company he built, was erased, labeled a fantasy. We are here today to make that fantasy a $200 million reality. We are here for what is his. He sat down to a profound, heavy silence. Marcus looked smug, nodding gravely at the arbitrator as if to say, "See simple." The Post reporter was already typing a headline. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," the arbitrator said, turning. "Ms. Shaw, your response." Rebecca Shaw stood. She did not pace. She did not raise her voice. She simply stood, a small, dark-clad figure in a room full of male egos. "Good morning, Your Honor," she said, her voice crisp and clear. "Mr. Harrison is correct about one thing. We are here today to discuss Mr. Thorne's contributions. We are here to talk about his vision and his tireless work. And we are so grateful he invited the press." A flicker of annoyance crossed Harrison's face. This wasn't the opening he expected. "Mr. Harrison has painted a picture of his client as a partner," Rebecca continued. "We'd like to paint a different one, a picture of a parasite." "Objection!" Harrison leaped to his feet. "That is inflammatory, unprofessional, and outrageous. She is slandering my client." "It is a statement of fact, Mr. Harrison," Rebecca said, her voice slicing through his bluster. "And unlike you, I've brought my receipts. Ben, the first slide, please." The 80-inch screen, which had been dark, hummed to life. It displayed a single, simple, sterile logo. Thorne Strategic Solutions, LLC Marcus, who had been leaning back, suddenly sat upright. His confident smirk wavered, replaced by a shadow of confusion. He glanced at Harrison, who looked equally baffled. This wasn't part of their presentation. "This," Rebecca said, picking up a laser pointer, "is Thorne Strategic Solutions, an LLC incorporated by Mr. Thorne 10 months ago. He has claimed in prior documents that this was a pre-approved executive compensation fund, a vehicle for his salary and bonuses." "And so it is," Harrison said, still on his feet. "This is a simple corporate structure. It's perfectly legal." "It is a corporate structure," Rebecca agreed, her voice dangerously pleasant. "But its purpose was anything but legal. Mr. Thorne, you see, was using this LLC to defraud his wife's company. He was using his executive authority to approve invoices from this vendor, a vendor owned 100% by himself." She clicked to the next slide. It was a wire transfer. "Payer Aura Interiors, Inc. Marketing Dept. Payee. Thorne Strategic Solutions, LLC. Amount $15,000. Memo. Strategic Consulting. Q1. Click. Payer Aura Interiors, Inc. Marketing Deputy. Payee. Thorne Strategic Solutions, LLC. Amount $20,000. Memo. Brand Outreach and Synergies. Click. Click, click, for 10 months, a total haul, Rebecca stated, of $195,000, not compensation. Embezzlement. Marcus's face had gone from tan to a sickly pale grey. He was no longer looking at the arbitrator. He was staring at the screen. "A simple marital asset dispute," Harrison tried again, but his voice was strained. He was paying himself from the marital pot. "It's waste, not fraud. It has no bearing on his 50% claim." "Oh, it has every bearing, Mr. Harrison," Rebecca said, "because it speaks to intent. You see, Mr. Thorne wasn't just paying himself. He was funding a new life and a new business. Let's see where this compensation went. Shall we? Click. A new slide. It was a montage of receipts. This is a bank statement from Thorne Strategic Solutions. A payment of $20,000 to Cartier. We have the receipt. It was for one love bracelet. The post reporter was typing so fast, her keys were clattering. "And this," Rebecca pointed to a new line item, "is a $35,000 wire transfer to a luxury property group." It was the 6-month prepaid deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment in Tribeca, an apartment, I might add, that Ms. Cloud has never set foot in. Marcus's mask of charm was gone. He was breathing heavily, his collar suddenly looking too tight. He was exposed as a cheat and a thief. But Rebecca was just getting started. "But Mr. Thorne wasn't just funding an affair," she said, her voice dropping. "He was investing. He was, as Mr. Harrison so eloquently put it, building. Just not for Aura." Click. A new logo appeared on the screen. It was a cheap, sharp-edged knockoff of Aura's elegant, flowing script. Echelon Designs, Inc. Echelon Designs, Rebecca narrated, incorporated 3 months ago, a new design firm, with a new office in Dumbo already being built out, with a new website currently in development, a direct competitor to Aura Interiors. Harrison was on his feet again, but this time he looked panicked. "This is irrelevant. My client has no connection to this entity. This is a diversion." "Is it?" Rebecca smiled, a thin, dangerous expression. "You're right. Mr. Thorne's name is nowhere on the incorporation papers. He's too smart for that. The owner of record is a holding company, which is in turn owned by..." Click. A photo appeared on the screen. It was Chloe Jensen's smiling, ambitious Aura employee headshot. A Ms. Chloe Jensen, a former junior designer at Aura, and Mr. Thorne's mistress. The room erupted in whispers. The arbitrator banged his gavel. "Quiet. Mr. Harrison, are you claiming your client wasn't using his wife's money funneled through his fraudulent LLC to set his mistress up in a competing business, because that alone is conspiracy and fraud? But don't worry. It gets so much worse." Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. He was staring at Elena, who for the first time turned her head and met his gaze. Her eyes were not fiery or tearful. They were cold. They were the eyes of a judge. "Mr. Thorne's entire case," Rebecca continued, her voice now a low, furious hum, "rests on the idea that he built Aura, but the digital forensic evidence recovered from his own hard drive shows he was actively planning to destroy it." Click. A new slide. Black screen, white text. It looked like an epitaph. "Server log, Aura Interiors, Central Server User, M. Thorne. Date, October 12th, 2025. Time, 2:13:47 a.m. The night Ms. Cloud uncovered his theft and his affair." Rebecca narrated. "The night she asked him to leave, he didn't go home to pack. He went to the office. At 2:13 in the morning, he logged into the company he claims to love. And what was he doing? Was he backing up his visionary files? Click, a file list appeared. Download Aura Client List Master, XLSX, 1.2 GB. Download Aura Vendor List Proprietary. DocX, 300 M download. Project Nomad, Pitch Finals.pdf, 2.4 GB. He was robbing her. Rebecca's voice was ice. He was stealing Aura's entire client list. He was stealing her proprietary, most guarded trade secret, her network of exclusive artisans and vendors. And he was stealing her active $100 million pitch for the Nomad Hotel project in Dubai, the single biggest project in Aura's history. Harrison was sputtering. "He's an executive. He had access to those files. He was working from home." "This is circumstantial. It proves nothing." "Circumstantial?" Rebecca asked, as if genuinely curious. "You're right, Mr. Harrison. A download isn't proof of intent. It's just data. But an email now. An email is a confession." Click. The screen split. On the left, Marcus's personal Gmail. On the right, Chloe Jensen's new HTTPS. Google.com. Search echelondesigns.com. Email. The text was large enough for everyone in the room to read. From mthorne6@gmail.com to Chloe. Jensen at HTTPS. www.google.com/search echelondesigns.com. Subject. Here we go. It's done. I have everything. The full client list and all of Aura's pricing models. Attached is the complete Nomad pitch. All of Elena's financials, her design specs. We can come in 15% lower and still clear a 60% margin. She'll never know what hit her. A collective audible gasp filled the room. The arbitrator, Judge Harrison, took off his glasses, polished them, and looked at Marcus with a new, profound, and utter disgust. Marcus Thorne was no longer a man. He was a bug under a microscope. He had slumped so far down in his chair, he was almost under the table, his face buried in his hands. "But wait," Rebecca said, twisting the knife. "There's more." Clicks. Chloe's reply. "Amazing. She's so arrogant, thinking those artisans are loyal to her. They're loyal to the money. When do you pull the trigger on the lawsuit? The reporter's head snapped up. The lawsuit click, Marcus's reply, the final nail, the epitaph for his entire life. Next week, the PR fallout will have her spinning. The board will be screaming to settle. By the time she realizes what's happening, we'll have landed Nomad. Echelon will be the new aura, and she'll be a footnote, a dinosaur. Rebecca Shaw hit the button on her remote. The screen went black. The room was plunged back into the harsh, normal light of the conference room. The performance was over. The silence was absolute, heavier than stone. Rebecca walked calmly back to her seat. "This," she said, her voice resonating in the quiet, "is Mr. Thorne's sweat equity. This is the vision he's demanding 50% for. He's not a partner. He's a parasite. He's not a visionary. He's a thief." She turned from the screen to face Marcus's lawyer directly. His entire lawsuit, his $50 million demand, his disgusting, calculated smear campaign against his wife. It was all a distraction, a smokescreen, a piece of theater designed to tie Ms. Cloud up in public litigation, destroy her reputation, and tank her company's value, all while he and his mistress stole her clients, her trade secrets, and her biggest projects from under her nose. Adrian Harrison had collapsed into his chair. He was ashen. He was looking at his client with a mixture of horror and fury. He had been lied to. He had been made a fool of publicly. "And that," Rebecca said, picking up her final file, "is why we're not just refuting your client's claim, Mr. Harrison. We are here to inform you that a full copy of this report and all its findings was delivered to the office of the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York at 8:00 a.m. this morning, with a criminal referral for wire fraud, conspiracy, and corporate espionage." Criminal referral. The words hung in the air, a death sentence. The Forbes reporter audibly whispered, "Oh my God!" Marcus finally looked up, his eyes wide and terrified, finding Elena's. Eleanor leaned forward, for the first time, her voice not loud, not emotional, but cold, clear and utterly final. "You didn't want half my company, Marcus," she said, the words cutting across the table. "You wanted all of it. You just wanted it under a new name." Rebecca Shaw stood and addressed the arbitrator. "Your Honor, we summarily reject Mr. Thorne's claim of 50%. We reject any claim. We are filing for an immediate default divorce judgment with cause. Furthermore, Aura Interiors is filing a civil suit against Mr. Thorne and Ms. Jensen jointly and severally for $75 million in damages, plus full restitution for the embezzled funds." She placed her file on the table and looked at Marcus Thorne, a man completely broken, his life in ruins. "He demanded half. He will be fortunate to leave this marriage with his freedom." Rebecca nodded to her team. She closed her briefcase with a quiet, definitive snap. "We are done here." The scene outside the arbitration center was chaos. Marcus Thorne, the man who had arrived as a sympathetic victim, was now a cornered animal. Reporters swarmed him, shouting questions. "Mr. Thorne, did you commit wire fraud? Were you building a new company with stolen money? Is the U.S. Attorney's Office investigating you?" He said nothing, his face ashen. He shoved his way through the crowd, Harrison pulling him toward a waiting car. He was no longer the charismatic visionary. He was a common criminal exposed in the most public way imaginable. The headlines the next day were brutal. Forbes ran aura of a con CEO husband's 50% demand, revealed as corporate espionage plot. The Post changed its tune, the husband who stole Christmas and a client list. The story was no longer a he said, she said. It was a he did, and she had proof. The fallout was swift and total. The legal case. The arbitrator threw out Marcus's claim immediately. The divorce was granted on grounds of fraud and adultery. Marcus received nothing. No house, no art, no savings. In fact, what assets he had were frozen, pending the outcome of Aura's $75 million civil suit. The criminal case, Marcus and Chloe Jensen were both indicted by the U.S. attorney. Faced with the mountain of evidence from the Kroll report, they both pleaded guilty. Chloe for conspiracy received probation. Marcus for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy was sentenced to 36 months in federal prison. The business Elena's board of investors, who had been so quick to doubt her, were now falling over themselves to apologize. Daniel Levine, the fund manager, sent a congratulatory and deeply apologetic case of expensive wine. Elena sent it back. She held an all-hands meeting at Aura. She didn't gloss over the details. She laid out the betrayal, the theft, and the fight. "We were wounded," she told her team, her voice echoing in the large studio. "But we were not broken. The part of this company that was rotten has been cut out, and we are stronger for it." Her team gave her a standing ovation. Project Nomad, impressed by her decisive action and horrified by Marcus's attempt to defraud them, signed an exclusive 10-year contract with Aura Interiors. The company's valuation, which had dipped, soared to new heights. Elena Cloud stood in her office looking out over Soho. It had been the worst 6 months of her life. She had been betrayed, humiliated, and nearly destroyed. But in the end, the very trap Marcus had set for her, the public stage, the media, the pressure had been the tools of his own undoing. He had demanded, half convinced of his own genius. Now he had nothing but a prison cell. She had lost a husband, but she had saved her company, and she had reclaimed something even more valuable, her name. In the end, Marcus Thorne's arrogance was his downfall. He was so convinced of his own charm that he couldn't see the difference between smooth talk and criminal fraud. He wanted to be the main character, but he was just a con artist. Elena, on the other hand, did what she had always done. She trusted the data she hired the best, and she fought for the company she had built with her bare hands. She proved that the best defense isn't a good offense. It's the unshakable, undeniable truth. What did you think of Elena's ultimate revenge? Do you think Marcus got what he deserved? This story is a powerful reminder that in business and in life, you should never underestimate a person fighting for what is truly theirs. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please show your support. It helps us create more content just like this. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a good story, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. You won't want to miss what we have coming next. Thank you for listening.